So I'd like to thank Julio and the organizers for inviting me to speak on behalf of Gilead Sciences. So Gilead was founded back in 1987, so a little over 25 years ago, and it was founded with a very clear mission to discover and develop medicines for diseases with major unmet medical need. And that commitment remains to this day. It is our primary purpose of existence. Clearly, the company has a very strong history and experience in discovery and development of antivirals. And that's a fact that's based on the core expertise of the people who built this company. John Martin was a co-inventor of ganciclovir, had long history of discovery of antivirals before he even came to Gilead, and brought with him a very strong knowledge of chemistry in this particular space. And he built a team of scientists that shared his vision in developing these type of drugs. And so in the mid-90s, Gilead started out, we were working on discovering, developing cidofovir and oseltamivir, which you know as Tamiflu, and then developed a systematic approach to coming up with new molecules for HIV, hepatitis B, and then most recently for the treatment of hepatitis C infection. So today we have 17 marketed medicines that we either distribute ourselves or through our partners. And of course we have numerous research programs and clinical trials. I believe this year alone we'll have around 170 Gilead-sponsored clinical trials. So that's not counting investigator-sponsored research or collaborative research for which we contribute drug. But also the company really has a very strong focus on patients. John himself set a very clear priority to increase access to our drugs for all people who can benefit from them, irrespective of their ability to pay. And very clearly, Gilead needs to make a profit in the developed world, but we realized that most of the HIV patients lived outside of the developed countries. And just to put things into perspective for you, Gilead was founded, as I said, in 1987. The first year Gilead made profit was in 2002, so it took 15 years to write any profit. And then Gilead started the Access program in 2003, the following year. So as I mentioned, the vast majority of individuals with HIV live in developing countries, and that was the focus of this Access program. And we have clearly learned in the last few years that expansion of antiretroviral therapy makes a difference, it saves lives, and it's helping to begin to turn the tide, although I think it's fair to say that we haven't reached the inflection point. So I want to begin by talking about the philosophy, the principles of Gilead's Access program for the developing world. There are three themes that I want to highlight. Number one, the focus on quality. Second, the engagement in partnership based on expertise. And thirdly, sustainable market-based approach. And so all of these principles have remained constant throughout the presence of this program for the last 10 plus years. The program has grown obviously substantially, and it has evolved based on the learnings that we have made, but also based on the feedback that we have received from stakeholder feedback. So let me talk about quality standards. One element that we feel very strongly about is that the quality of care, the quality of the drug should be the same as for developed countries. So if we're talking about ultimately bringing forward the best drugs possible to the developing world, and they should have the same quality of production. I was very happy with, listening to Anil's presentation yesterday, who also emphasized that point. And it also includes the access to the best drug combinations, access to fixed dose combinations and single tablet regimens. So Gilead worked out a program of tiered pricing based on the ability to pay across a variety of parameters for developing countries, most notably the GDP, so to have an objective measure of economic prosperity or, of course, poverty in many of these countries. but also disease prevalence. Intellectual property. Gilead felt very strongly, and we still feel very strongly, that intellectual property is not only neutral, it's not only a detriment to access, but in fact can enhance and facilitate access. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And finally, innovative partnerships. Partnerships with other stakeholders are critical to rolling out any drug program for the developing world. And it's very clear that it is neither our primary function, nor could we ever think to achieve that we could do this on our own. There's a variety of stakeholders that need to contribute for any innovative company to bring drugs into other countries. So the Gilead approach is really twofold. First, it's based on branded distribution. So when Gilead started this out with this approach, it made tenofovir disoproxil fumarate available at steeply discounted prices in over 125 low and middle income countries. And again, the precise formula was based on an analysis of disease prevalence and GDP. And that took us only so far. And then we realized we could never, as a US-based company, produce drugs cheap enough to get enough people on therapy. And so Gilead as a company engaged in a series of voluntary licensing agreements with a multitude of manufacturers, largely based in India, based on the high level of chemical engineering expertise and scientific education and production quality to produce, in fact, high quality, low cost variant. So let me talk a little bit about the type of work that we do with our distribution partners. Clearly, the ultimate goal is to work and ensure the effective and appropriate use of Gilead medicines. Just like we have educational efforts in the developed world, we seek to facilitate an effective, appropriate use of our medicines in the developing world. That includes, it starts always with product registration. So today we have 228 products registered. There's 100 registrations each, more than 100 registrations each for Vyriad and Truvada alone. There's a series of medical education and training events that take place. Just last year we did around 50 such educational events in the developing world alone. Logistics and supply management. So we have heard a little bit about that yesterday, the importance of accurate forecasting. So we have our own forecasting group. We share this information with our distributors, and we also share it with our generics partners. And finally, collaborative research. We have talked about the science behind treatment as prevention. We've learned a lot about that. We've talked about the importance of implementation research. That continues, and we are engaging into these activities with our partners. So let me talk a little bit more about the fantastic contribution that our generic licensing partners have played here. So when we started out with this program and engaged into these licensing agreements, it enabled us, of course, to transfer technology to enable faster and quality production, and we did that very rapidly. So under the terms of these agreements, our partners are able to develop any tenofovir-based fixed-dose combination or pediatric formulation. They're free to sell API within India with no royalty payment to Gilead. They are free to set their own price for finished product, distributed in the 112 least developed countries. And there's a small royalty to Gilead on price of finished goods of 3% on adult medicines. There's no royalty on pediatric product that are newly licensed. The goal of this is, as I will tell you, is having these structured agreements is to have some input into quality, but also to fund the educational activities and the other activities that I've described in the previous slide. Now, to further encourage the quality, one of the terms of the agreement is, of course, that the generic supplier seeks WHO tentative FDA approval for the product. And as an example of a joint research collaboration between Gilead and generics companies, I want to highlight the FTC cost reduction agreement. Obviously 3TC is much more prevalent, and frankly it's cheaper to produce than FTC. And part of the reason why this is the case is because not just the more complex chemistry, but also that we haven't had the global scale to enable the research that would require to find the most cost-effective synthetic route. So Gilead engaged a cost reduction agreement with 3 of our Indian partners to enable that type of research, to make it possible for them to invest into that research and to make the drug available at the lowest possible price. So as a consequence of that, we have really seen a dramatic drop in the price reduction of TDF in the last 7 years. There's a reduction of 80%. And at the same time, branded product has now dropped to less than 3% in the developing world. Our generic partners contribute more than 97% of tenofovir-based drug in the developing world. And we have seen a TDF price of as little as $4 per patient per month. Also, Gilead was the first innovator company to sign with the UN Medicine Patent Pool. And the goal of this was really to further reach out to other companies, generics companies, that might not have wanted to negotiate directly with Gilead for whatever reason. But basically, the patent pool is granted similar terms as Gilead's Indian partners for the purpose of sub-licensing to qualifying manufacturers. And also, it's worth noting that the terms include not just the license to TDF, plus future rights to pipeline product. And David has talked about the importance of bringing forward novel drugs, the best drugs possible, and frankly also drugs of lower dose. The dose of TDF is 300 milligram, and the dose of TAF, which is a different prodrug, tenofovir alafenamide, which is a different prodrug of tenofovir, is 25 milligram. So again, this enables ultimately cheaper production of API. And under the terms of these arrangements with the Medicines Patent Pool, the sub-licensees have the option to pick and choose from a menu to license as they wish. So as a consequence of all of this, we have seen a growth in patients' reach, which was really the goal for when this program was initiated in 2003. There's now, end of 2013, there's about 5.4 million patients on tenofovir in the developing world in low and middle income countries, which is roughly 56% of all receiving therapy. So looking ahead, we'll remain committed to discovering and developing the best medicines possible for the diseases that we are engaged in. But we're also strongly committed to access programs. I think it's a proven model. It's reaching more than 5 million HIV patients alone. The program is now financially self-sustaining and scalable. And at the same time, we are well aware that this program will need to remain flexible so it can grow and evolve as needed, based on the feedback from stakeholders like you in this room and people out in the field. We don't know where this epidemic will go, and we realize that we'll have to adapt some of the parameters of this program. We've also expressed publicly our wish to expand focus on viral hepatitis, both including hepatitis B and hepatitis C. Again, this will require a partnership that goes way beyond our company, which holds the IP, but includes most likely other companies will work with us, generics company will most likely ultimately involve a donor pool, people who will pay for these kind of treatments and make them available. So over the coming years, Gilead's goal is to reach millions more patients, and we'll look to distributors and generic partners to playing key roles. Again, we'll focus on developing innovative medicines and supporting collaborative research, and those partnerships will be critical to us achieving this goal. So I thank you for your attention.